The very first camellias to be planted in the collection were down in the formal gardens in an area known now as the presentation area, where there are 67 camellias still surviving from their planting date in 1976. Only one of which is a sasanqua, plantation pink, which is tucked in right at the back and flowering really rather well. Okay, this is the area known as the Amphitheater. You're looking out across Plymouth Sound to Plymouth City. Swinging round, you've got Drake's Island. And in the park here, there's Milton's Temple. And then round we go, there's camellias underneath the trees. And then this is the Amphitheater. And the Amphitheater pond, which always looks very good at this time of year. So many of the trees going yellow in the background there. Further on round again, and this is the south facing side, so it's still trees, but the camellias stick out the front of the trees and they're getting much more sun than the ones on the other side of the Amphitheater. So I'm going to plant a couple of sasanquas down in this bottom corner here, where they'll be in pretty much full sun. Two newly planted camellias here. One is sasanqua variegata, and the other one, I've currently forgotten the name. Paradise something, I do believe. This is one that I planted a few years ago, called Souvenir de Claude Brevet, which is a French raised variety, supposedly a form of or a hybrid of oleifera. It's certainly got very fine, big pink flowers, and it's providing a bit of late nectar for one of the bees that they have a bee project going on, trying to resurrect the Cornish black bee. And I think that's very likely what that is, that's harvesting the pollen from that. There are groups of camellias all the way up the amphitheatre on both sides. With some sasanquas amongst them. This is Maiden's Blush, which is the best I've ever seen it looking. It's mainly wasps that you see in the flowers this time of year. You've got to be very careful about sniffing them to see whether they're scented, because there's quite often a wasp in the middle of it. There's a group of camellias along the back of the bank here, all of which were under very dense cover from beech trees. But one of the beech trees fell down a few years ago. This is Winter's Charm, which is now getting at least some sunlight, not perhaps as much as it would like. And just a bit further along, where the tree actually came down and let a lot of light in, this is Snow Flurry, which is absolutely beautiful. This barely flowered at all before the tree came down. Alongside of it is a rather low domed bush, which was labelled Winter's Rose, which was clearly wrong. And I have now relabelled it Winter's Charm, although I still have some reservations because the habit of it is quite different from the one I've just passed by. Anyhow, by any name, it's a beautiful thing. This is one of Dr. Ackerman's winter hardy varieties that he raised. Up at the top end of the amphitheater, lower section, is sasanqua, old Japanese single white flowered sasanqua variety. And then alongside of sasanqua is Shiro Wabazuki, and this is a beautiful thing. Little trumpet shaped flowers with a proper perfume, not your sasanqua slightly oily aroma. This beautifully healthy, lustrous, glossy flowering bush is another plant of sasanqua. This got smashed to smithereens by a tree falling on it some years ago. Must be 5 years ago. But has now made a very good recovery. And it's looking very much better than its mate a few yards away, which was mist. So there we are, the lower amphitheater. Right, I'm up in the top of the park here now, in an English section, and this, which is coming out at the appropriate time of year for a change, is November pink. By no means does it ever feel bound to flower at the right time. So this is one of the earlier Williamsii hybrids, a single pink flower, raised at Carriageway. It starts flowering sometimes in October, sometimes November, sometimes December, usually open before the new year. This is interesting. This is Tanya, and I have never seen so many flowers on this ever. I was just picking, deciding what I was going to say, and what I mainly was going to say was that it was dubious whether it was worth growing it at all. But when you look at it now, the answer is a clear yes. The flowers are small, but it's actually a remarkably good display, especially considering that we've not had a particularly sunny summer, which I would have thought would be more likely to produce a display like this. This has the typical sasanqua, rather musky aroma, barely describable as a perfume. And tucked in, and again, what a superb display this is putting on this year. This is Hugh Evans. I have never seen this one flower so well. It must be abundant moisture, I think, making the difference this year. What a truly astonishing sight. I've never seen it with half as many flowers. Presumably all the buds are out at once, and it'll be a comparatively short-lived display. Maybe that's the difference between this year and other years. Maybe it's simply that all the flowers are out at once rather than flowering over a long period. Anyway, it would be profoundly ungrateful to complain about that. This is a plant of Cleopatra that I planted three weeks ago, something like that. And I see that the tips have all been nibbled off by the deer, which is a bit of a problem because it was too broad and bushy to put wire around it. Perhaps they'll leave it alone, but I see it does have one flower on it, which is nice to see. This level carriageway is what's known as the Earl's Drive. Slopes steeply up to the right and steeply down to the left. So the camellias that are planted all along here are not very accessible. There are a few sasanquas here. This is Lady de Samareth. Early flowering white. The flowers tend to stay cupped. There's another plant here of Souvenir de Claude Brevet. This is a variety that's supposed to be pink and white striped, but both the bushes here seem to have reverted to solid pink. But they're very big pink flowers, so it's quite worth having even so. There's some very good trees in the park. Buried in the middle of this selection here, there's some from the Edinburgh Conifer Conservation Programme from years ago, which is Dacrycarpus dacrydioides, I believe. Very good ginkgo there. Some very, very large rhododendrons. Moving around, the tall tree here is one of the tallest liquid ambers I know of, with Vitis cognitii growing pretty much to the top of it. So that will colour up spectacularly in due course. The so-called species section should have been the species and sasanqua section, because it splits pretty much 50-50 between the two, with a few other things thrown in as well. Some of it is in pretty deep shade, which doesn't suit the sasanquas very well, but there are a couple of places where trees have fallen down, let the light in, so they're doing pretty well. So here we go, we've got a beech tree that's just been left, well, the trunk has been left lying. To the left of it there is Sasanqua Rainbow. Just behind that is Camellia thaliensis, starting to flower. If I swing round, there's Camellia Sasanqua variegata, just starting to flower. Got another plant of Hugh Evans here, again flowering extraordinarily freely. Some years ago this one sported a pale form, and it's still got it, but it's the flowers have gone over. I have tried a couple of occasions to propagate from that shoot, but not succeeded. This one here is the ever popular Narumigata with these saucer shaped flowers. Until the flowers are almost at the point of breaking up, they're always cupped in that to some degree. Rainbow was a variety that Nuccio's nursery in California got from Japan, without names, part of a batch of 32 camellias, of which they named 3. Rainbow was one, Navajo was another. Lovely thing. Lots and lots of wasps on this bush. Almost every flower seems to have one. This is the species thaliensis. Big leaves, small cupped flowers with a big prominent boss of stamens. And just behind it, there's just a single flower open so far. Oh, there's a couple more. This is Tago no Suki. This bush was labelled oleifera for many, many years, and there are 2 others of it nearby, both of which were labelled Fukuzutsumi, but they are in fact Tago no Tsuki, which appears to have been grown in the UK for 100 years or more, entirely under the wrong name. Been known as Narumigata, been known as fragrans. This is one of Bob Cherry's Paradise series. Struggling to remember the name. Fortunately, just about every plant in the collection is labelled. It's Paradise Hilda. Next to Paradise Hilda is the excellent Plantation Pink. These nice simple single pink flowers, fair sized, Australian variety. And alongside that we have this baby, 1001 Summer Nights Jasmine. This is the plant that was on the Plant of the Year stand at Chelsea Flower Show 2022. Can't remember exactly when it was. Anyhow, this is the baby, this is the one. Flowering now, it's only been flowering for a few weeks, so the idea that it's a summer flowerer I haven't seen evidence of here yet. This is Camellia Navajo. And here we have Crimson King. I think Crimson King is probably one of these things that there's more than one form of in cultivation. Certainly I've seen much better red plants under the same name than this one is. But it's good, nothing wrong with it. Just up from that's a variety called Uemachi, which I see has just got one flower opening. This is a hybrid that just flowers for months. Lovely thing. And right alongside that is this, which I think is still labelled Sparkling Burgundy, but isn't. It's Showanosaki, our Japanese variety. There have been 3 plants labelled Sparkling Burgundy in the collection. One turned out to be Hugh Evans, the other 2 have both turned out to be Showanosaki. Alongside it is a whopping great big bush of Plantation Pink, again flowering very well indeed. And then from that, panning round, is another big sprawly bush of rainbow. And there's a big bush of rainbow, but there's also alongside of that is a different white, very, very similar, which I've yet to put a name to. The Plantation Pink merges into a variety called Dazzler. This is your classic Camellias type with these vivid pink flowers. Semi-double, sometimes double, almost to the point of being a formal double, but never quite making it. Again, I'm massively impressed with how much flower there is on this bush this year. Never seen as much flower as at one go. And then next to that is yet another Hugh Evans. This is always good, this one. Of the 5 or 6 or more Hugh Evans in the collection, this is probably in the best location. It's sheltered, but it gets quite a bit of sun. This is Camellia cordata, that's C-A-U-D-A-T-A, which does have, this year flowered, I think for the first time I've seen it flower, tiny little white flowers, and the foliage is infinitely more worth having than the flowers. Sometimes in this place you've got to go really pushing through the undergrowth. But one is then rewarded by things like this, which is papava. Way too shady for it here really, but this flowers remarkably reliably, considering it gets covered in plane tree leaves and turkey oak as well by the look of it. Camera's not coping very well. Palest of pinks, almost white. These are the plane trees that overhang sections 1M and 1N. Absolute monsters. The Earls Garden's the only bit of the park where you have to pay to get in. There are a few sasanquas in here though, including this one, which I don't know that I recognise necessarily, unless this is, it does look like Shawanosaki again. I'm going to have to do a very careful comparison of flowers and foliage. Things you don't expect to find at the beginning of November. And then also in the Earls Garden is this one, which I think might be Paradise Blush. Certainly one of the Paradise series. Beautiful. That's the end of my day, and certainly that's a case of last but not least. Well, there we are, a snapshot of the Camellias at Mount Edgcumbe on the 5th of November. It ran a little bit longer than I thought, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back in maybe another month's time to see what's flowering just before Christmas.